it's not limited to Bharatavarsha, to India. Humans all over have created devatas, like Oshun, like the Egyptians created devatas. And so they're perceiving realities, human beings that were creating these devatas, they were perceiving realities from this angle. Those realities are perceiving the humans from that angle. They meet in the middle. And where they meet, then there is an interaction that then generates a being that for some period of time behaves for the human beings as a devata.
Namaste, welcome to another edition of Sangam Talks. My guests today are Dr. Ramkumar, we sat yesterday, hopefully you've seen this edition, and Dr. Robert Svoboda today. I knew about you for a long time from your book Aghora, but beyond that, I've known that you've been practicing Ayurveda, you've been trained as an Ayurveda Acharya here, and you train here, and our conversations on Jyotish, yoga, you're like a multifaceted, Indic knowledge systems person all over. So tell us a little bit about, maybe to begin with, on how did you get into everything, Ayurveda to yoga to Jyotisha, Tantra, of course.
It all started when I'm very good at taking tests. So I was able to get a bachelor's degree in the United States by age 18. So then I thought, what will I do? And some of my friends were studying medicine, so I thought I'll get admitted to a medical school. So I got admitted to a medical school, and then I thought I should go to some place that is very, very exotic. And I didn't know where it was very exotic, but I thought Africa sounds very exotic. So I went to Africa. And I was very fortunate that I survived Africa because I got sick several times. But as a result of getting sick the first time, I got treated by a quote-unquote witch doctor and got a really good result from that, and was impressed because up until that time, I had no idea there was anything different than Western medicine. And then I was so that was in Ivory Coast, and then I went to Nigeria and got sick again, and happened to meet the right people who helped me get better, and then was taken to the chief shrine of one of the goddesses there. So then I realized that, there are people still worshiping gods and goddesses, and they're getting good results. And it turns out that particular goddess, Oshun, is now worshipped in Brazil and several other places.
Wow.
And so I've had this. Yes, because it's the same way. I currently live in Houston, Texas. And in Houston, Texas, we have the third tallest statue in the United States, after the Statue of Liberty is number 1, and there's some statue of Pegasus in Florida that's number 2. But we have the 95-foot Hanumanji statue. Made up. It just opened in December, I think. So the 95-foot tall Hanumanji statue, which is it opened in September, I think. And that area is very flat. So there's this giant statue that is sort of overlooking everything. But we also have the only Meenakshi temple outside of India. And it's a real Meenakshi temple. I've gone there. It's certainly smaller than Madurai Meenakshi, but there are Gopurams and it's in Pearland, which is very near where I grew up for 5 years, 65 years ago. And back at that time, if you had told me there would be a Hindu temple
in the US,
in Pearland, Texas, which was a wide spot in the road, I would have said, you're insane. But there it is, and I've been there, and the priests are all from Tamil Nadu, and they are doing the worship just like it is being worshipped. So the question is, what is Meenakshi Ji doing in Houston, Texas? She also, there's been a diaspora all over the world of people from India. So she also wanted to see what it was like. How did you Srinivasa Venkateshwara from Tirupati decide that he wanted to go to Malibu and to Pittsburgh? Because Deknahe, he wanted to, also see what is all this happening. What are these asuras doing over here? So there are temples all over, and there are devatas all over. So the devatas from the Yoruba land, they're called orishas. They also decided they wanted to travel. So when Brazil had slaves even much longer than the U.S. did, almost 20 years longer, and so they brought the slaves over from Brazil, and they brought their gods with them, and so the gods are now. Not just the black folk, but lots of people in Brazil worship these orishas. So I was very fortunate. So I met a witch doctor, then I met Oshun, and then I joined a tribe in Kenya. I'm the first white member of the Pokot tribe. So by this time, I was thinking, gosh, I don't think I can go back to. I'm pretty sure I can't go back to the U.S. just yet, because I have now seen that there is an entirely gigantic big world of people doing all kinds of unusual different things that nobody is telling me about. So I didn't even know that I needed to be decolonized, but I was rapidly being decolonized just by virtue of wandering through Africa. This was 52 years ago. So I flew to London. I brought my spears with me. I traveled on the plane with my mud pack hairdo. I went through immigration in England. Nobody said anything. I handed my spears over to my sister, who happened to be studying in Cambridge. I had a barber cut underneath. He charged me twice as much because it dulled his scissors. I packed it up. I was hitchhiking. I happened to be picked up by a guy who was an amateur anthropologist, and he sent it off to the US, and I still have it with me. And then I thought, what do I do next? So then I thought, wait, we have family friends in Nepal. So I hitchhiked and took buses and trains and so on, went overland to Nepal. So I had gone from the west coast of Africa to the east coast, then flew to London and went to Nepal. And in Nepal,
by road from London to Nepal? It was all by road.
Back then, this was 73. So I went through Iran, I went through Afghanistan, I went through Pakistan, and I ended up in Nepal. And while I was there, I learned about Ayurveda. And I learned about Ayurveda from the Peace Corps doctor. I still remember his name, Dr. Larry True. So it's a good name, Dr. Satya. And so I thought, Ayurveda, that sounds great. Here's this entire medical system that's totally organized, thousands of years old. I've never heard of it, but why shouldn't I know more about it? But that was as much as he could tell me. So then I thought, okay, let me think about that for a while. Meanwhile, the Dalai Lama was doing a Kala Chakra initiation in Bodh Gaya, and all kinds of people in Kathmandu wanted to go. So I thought, I will also go. So I went down to Bodh Gaya, and there were 5 lakhs of people there. But all of the Tibetans were very impressive, and I could tell that there was some definite hava there. His Holiness was very impressive, but there was one very impressive saint who has sadly passed on. His name was Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Giant man, but also he just was radiating Shakti. So I thought, whoa, whatever he's got, I've got to have some of that. And then I thought, that means I must stay in India. But how will I do that? I will become a student of Ayurveda. So this is what I decided. But of course, I had no idea exactly how I was going to do that. There I was in Bodh Gaya. I had just showed up. And so I took the 36-hour train from Gaya to Bombay. And I showed up in Bombay and immediately fell in love with Bombay. We're now in January of 74. And so I was thinking, gosh, I have to figure out how to study Ayurveda. How am I going to do this?
I must interject here. This part of the story is we were talking earlier about you have the intention and it will manifest.
doors open.
Door will open. Now that is what he's going to be talking about right now.
Exactly. And so the intention was there. But I mean, here I am in Bombay, and I mean, I'm loving Bombay, but I have no clue any more than I had while I was in Gaya of what I'm going to do. But I happened to walk up to a Chinese restaurant that doesn't exist anymore, the Sea High restaurant in Kolaba. And at the moment that a man and his wife and son walk out, and all I do is I ask him, is this a decent restaurant? I was traveling with another Videshi friend named Robert. And he said, yes, this is a good restaurant. He whipped out some money. He handed it to me. He said, eat here tonight and come eat with us tomorrow.
Okay.
So I went to meet with them the next day, and we became great friends. I used to house sit for them for whenever they were gone, and I still remain friends with I would remain friends with them until both of them passed on, and I still know his two sons. But they said, as you do, what are you doing here in India? And I said, well, gosh, I'd like to study Ayurveda, but I don't know how I will do that. And they said, and Mr. Daftari said, well, I honestly don't know much about Ayurveda, except that my mama is Dr. Mehta, who was the chairman of the committee that translated the Charak Samhita from Sanskrit into Gujarati, Hindi, and English back in the late 40s. So I thought, well, and I met Dr. Mehta, very nice man. But he was, in his 80s. He was retired a long time ago. So Mr. Daftari said, that's all I know about Ayurveda. But I thought, I'm getting close. Something is happening now. So they said, please walk downstairs, one flight of stairs, and meet Dr. and Mrs. Punchi, because there is a saintly man from Hyderabad who is visiting there. He may know something. So I walked downstairs, one flight of stairs, from floor number 3 to floor number 2, and I knocked on the door. And I was let in, and I met Dr. Punchi and Mrs. Punchi and the saintly man. And I said, I'd like to study Ayurveda. And he said, what a great idea. So one of his devotees was Mr. Fazl Boy, who was very interested in yoga, and who was an industrialist. And he said, well, as it turns out, Pandit Shiv Sharma, who was India's most eminent Ayurvedic Vidya at the time, and had been elected to parliament specifically for the purpose of regularizing Ayurvedic education, Pandit Shiv Sharma belongs to Rotary Club Bombay South, just like I do. I will phone him up. So he phoned up Pandit Shiv Sharma, and I went to see Panditji, and Panditji said, well, if you want to study Ayurveda, you're in luck, because the Tilak Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya of Pune, they're going to have one batch this year in the English medium, and you will only have to learn Sanskrit. Yes, there are 4 question papers in Sanskrit, but you have 9 months. That's, you should be able to do it by then. At least you will not have to learn Sanskrit and Marathi at the same time. So I thought, this sounds, learning one foreign language at a time sounds better than 2. So he wrote out a nice letter, admit the student immediately. Because he said, you're going to have to go back to the U.S., because in India, if you want a student visa, you have to get it in the country that you're domiciled in. You'll have to go back and get a visa, but you'll have 3 months before you're right in time. You'll have 3 months before the term begins. So I went to Pune, and I went to the Ayurveda college. I'm sure I'm the first Videshi that ever went there. I mean, that walked into the Ayurveda college. And
in India, anywhere in India.
I don't know about anywhere in India, probably, but definitely in Pune. And I walked in and said, I've come here to join the college. And just when they were all going to open their mouths and explain to me the 100 reasons why this would not happen, I showed them the letter. Oh, it was a sad moment for everyone. Because now they cannot say no to Pandit Shiv Sharma. So now they have to let me in. So I went from not knowing what I was going to do to being admitted into the college in the space of, I can't remember, it was 7 days or 10 days or something like that. So, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to have to say that there was some kind of fate involved.
I was just going to ask you that. Is it fate? Is it predestined? And in my worldview of how I've internalized, it is Pandit Shiv Sharma, Mr. Daftari that you ran into, perhaps are simply people you've met in your past lifetimes, and your desire for becoming an Ayurveda Acharya or practicing Ayurveda comes from obviously the past somewhere. And perhaps it is you yourself who's figured out a time and place where you could bump into all of them and it would work out exactly how it worked out. Is that's how, at least in my mind, I've worked out that it's only the individual soul which is working out everything at the right time, which we call fate. I don't know if there's grace involved. I can't figure that piece out. So I don't know. You want to react to this? Or?
Well, I have two things.
Yes.
And number one is, the beauty is,
which is Prarabdha, right? And
it is Prarabdha. The beauty is that the law of karma does not require anybody to think about it. The law of karma positions you where you need to be at a particular moment. And if you cooperate with the law of karma, then the law of karma is going to cooperate with you. And it says, this is a basic principle of the Bharatiya Vidyas. I can't remember, Ramkumarji probably remembers exactly where it is, but in Charak it says, if you behave properly with the food grains and the farm animals and the gemstones, they will behave properly with you.
That's very interesting. What do you mean they will behave properly?
Well, what is behaving properly with any man?
No, which is fine, but how do they behave properly?
You need to be respectful towards them. You need to appreciate them for what they can do. You need to understand that you should not be trying to grab hold of them and put them in a big pile. And that they are there potentially for you to make use of for some purpose that is beneficial. That will benefit you, that will benefit them. So, if you don't behave properly with those things, they're not going to behave properly with you. If you decide that you want to grab hold of them, then they will. That's not in their interest, and they're not thinking about this.
They seem to be saying that they're actually living entities, conscious entities.
Everything is a living entity. This is a living entity. Everything is, according to the Sankhya Darshana, everything is evolute of awareness. So everything has some awareness now. There's not a whole lot of awareness in this cup until something that has awareness, like a human being, starts to put attention on it. So it's with a Shiva Linga. Initially, a Shiva Linga is just a piece of rock.
Shava.
It's a Shava. But after you do prana patishta, or if you're some kind of nath or siddha or rishi, you just look at the thing, you convey prana into it, then it comes to actual life. And then it has to be fed, and then it has to be taken care of. The same thing with Prarabdha, with mercury. If you're working with it, you bring it to life, you do things with it. And that's a higher degree of awareness and consciousness than something that's just ordinary. But you can collect something like this. If you had a cup that some really, really saintly person had used, some of their vibration will be picked up by that cup and will be able to be conveyed to somebody else. So partly it is Prarabdha, for sure. Partly it is the portion of your accumulated karmas. You've been performing karmas for millions of janmas, millions of births. They've accumulated in a big heap, which is why it's called Sanchit karma. But only a portion of that at any one moment is ready to give you the karma phala, the fruit of those karmas. And that portion, by virtue of the workings of the law of karma, and to some degree of how you as an individual are exerting your desire, those two things together create that prarabdha creates the situation where you're going to be born, who the parents will be, what kind of situation you'll be in, and what is the general trajectory of your life going to be.
So you're not only saying that the Prarabdha played into this with your intention of doing or learning Ayurveda, and you ran into Mr. Daftari, then into all the following incidents that happened. You're also saying that if you had not taken the conscious decision of saying, say for example, Mr. Daftari said, eat here and come back, meet me tomorrow. Had you not gone back, would your life have taken a different destiny?
It would have taken a different, it's possible I still would have eventually been dragged back in the direction of Ayurveda if that destiny was strong enough. If not, then I would have gone off in some other direction, and so that opportunity.
Part of the Sanchit karma would have started playing.
Another part of the Prarabdha. So the Prarabdha is what any individual who is born is working from his or her Prarabdha. The Sanchit karma is important, but it's working at a much more indirect way. The Prarabdha is working in a much more direct way.
But in the same body, in the same lifetime, in the same body and same lifetime, we could have two different trajectories of life?
Potentially, people, and this is what as Vimalanandaji used to say, everyone has free will. But what you have the free will to do is to cooperate with, he used to call it nature, I like to call it the universe or providence or whatever, but you can cooperate with reality or you cannot cooperate with reality. So he said, always live with reality, because eventually you're going to have to live with reality. If you don't live with reality today, reality is going to come live with you. And that may be it, if you've gone far off the trajectory you need to be on, that may be an unpleasant moment. Now, in Jyotish, we divide the accumulated karmas into 3 different categories. And this often you can tell from the horoscope, sometimes you can tell from the palm. There's Drirah karma. Drirah means sucked. Drirah means very, and Drirah karma is what you predict on. Because Drirah karma, that means that's the karma that is really likely to behave like fate. And there's Adrirah karma. That means it's not fixed. That means you're going to have a lot more potential to make choices than you do in something that's Drirah karma. And then in between we have Drirah karma. And that means it's fixed, but it's not totally fixed yet. We painted the wall, but it's not yet dry. So if we work really hard and apply some paint thinner and strip off what we put on and apply some more paint, we can change the color of the wall, but it's going to be a lot of work. Drirah karma, possibly you're not going to be able to. You may be able to reduce the intensity, but you probably can't evade the karma. So you need to be able to know in your own life what things are going to behave like Drirah karma and what things are what areas you're going to have more options in.
Does that help living a better life?
It has the potential to help. Everything depends on how you use whatever information you obtain. Whether it benefits you or not is going to be determined by what you do with that information.
Does it restrict us? Does it create bias in our minds or fears, for example? I stopped going to consulting any Jyotishas because, some very often, including recently, for instance, we were doing some puja at the Sringeri Mutt for my friend Vishnu Shankar Jain, and they also called me, and they looked at our birth dates and stuff, and then gave some information. Now, it's okay. I almost know I know myself what's being told, so I'm not sure if it's helping me take any decisions or improve what I'm going to do or what I'm going to pursue. So how would it help?
Well, if that's the case with you and Jyotish, then maybe that's not so useful for you. I'm interested in, I believe it was Sir John Woodruff, Arthur Avalon, who said that the test of Ayurveda is results.
Yes.
The test of Ayurveda is does your patient either get well or does your patient die a comfortable death or whatever? Do you get the result that you want to get? If you do, then your chikitsa, your treatment was good. If not, then you made a mistake. It's not like, there's not some sort of test that you can, bribe the examiner or steal the question paper or something. It's like here is the reality and you have to deal with it. It's the same way in Jyotish. It's the same way with anything else. So it's convenient that there are many different Vidyas that we can make use of, but we need to make use of the ones that we have faith in. It's all about Vishwas. It's all about Shraddha. It's all about, because both of these things, Vishvasa, Vishesha, Shvasa. And Shvasa means what? You're taking in breath, but that breath contains prana, contains oxygen, etc., but it contains prana. And Shraddha comes from Hrud, and Hrud comes from Hridaya, and that's the thing that spreads, sends the blood and the oxygen, but the prana to all parts of the body too. So if you have Vishwas and Shraddha, then you're connecting with your prana. If you want to get anything done in your life, you and your prana have to have a good relationship. So you find the thing you have faith in, and that's what you rely on, whatever that is. And it doesn't, it's always better if you have faith in something that is actually real and doing something. But what is a placebo effect, after all? That you have faith that the medicine is doing something. And they found now that you can even know that it's a placebo and it will still give the result because you have faith in it. So I am, it's someone who has studied Jyotisha and who is trying to earn a living as a Jyotishi, which is not easy because of the karmas involved in doing that. That person may be thinking, and it's not the right thing to do, but there's always a tendency to think of your client as an opportunity to earn some money, which is, of course, something that is going to interfere with your practice of Jyotisha. Because Lakshmi and Saraswati are two separate Shaktis. In the Vedic time, that was fine. That was Shri. In the Vedic time, but that was a different zamana, and we're in a different zamana. So to get Lakshmi and Saraswati to cooperate together is not so easy. And if you are focusing on Lakshmi when you're supposed to be focusing on Saraswati, then Saraswati is going to say, I'm going to find somebody else. So then you end up not having the right relationship with the Vidya. It's all about relationship. Everything is about relationship. So when you want to, it's a sad reality, but there are many people who focus on Ayurveda and Jyotish and Vastu and so on, chiefly as a way of earning money. But that is not going to benefit the Vidya, and the Vidya is not going to remain cooperative. Maybe it will take some time, but eventually, according to whatever karmas there are, they're going to be going their separate ways.
So the Vidya is not going to be cooperative, or the Devi, the Saraswati, is not.
Well, a Vidya is a Devi.
Is a Devi.
They're all versions of Saraswati.
I've asked this question. I've dabbled with this for a very, very long time. Are the Devatas and Devis, are they real sentient beings, not the physical body, or are they simply energies and we give the form and shape to them?
Would you? I think the first question that we have to ask you is: you appear to be a real sentient being. Where is your sentience coming from? Did you generate it yourself?
No, of course.
Okay, so where did it come from if you didn't generate it?
No. So the being is conscious, and I'm like we were talking yesterday, and this actress had a quote which I picked up. I believe this quote comes from Conversations with God. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. She was in Kumbh, so she wrote this.
He knows the
Preeti
actress,
Zinta.
you
Oh,
can-
Preeti Zinta. She said in a tweet after visiting Kumbh, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a human experience. Very beautifully put.
Right. So if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, that implies that there are such things as spiritual beings.
Yes.
So if the spiritual beings can be like you and me who are currently human, there is every reason to believe that there could be other spiritual beings who are not currently human.
Human. I completely agree. Exactly.
Now, the way that I like to look at it is if you have one of the big challenges, or I find it a big challenge in the world, is science has for many decades now been materialistic, and say that they believe only in the Panchabhautic existence, the five Mahabhutas. They don't believe there can be anything beyond that.
I mean, even in that, their idea of elements is totally different. The Panchamahabhut is.
But in any event, the material, the
Material
world,
world.
everything is mechanistic and so on.
Right.
And consciousness arose, but they don't explain how consciousness arose.
By the brain, still, yeah.
But even where did that come? Where did consciousness, where did life come from? How did it go from not being here to being that? To me, that seems a lot. The whole concept of the Big Bang is what the Sankhya philosophy says also.
Yeah.
There was a singularity. The Big Bang, there was a singularity. The Big Bang, the singularity was made out of matter and energy, and it created more matter and energy. In Sankhya, the singularity was the Satyam, Ritam, Brahat. It was the Sachidananda. It was one thing. It was aware. It had no limitations whatsoever of any kind, except the limitation that it could not experience itself because there was nothing but it. So is Jnaneshwar Maharaj, who is one of the first trips I took outside of Pune was to Alandi, which is where Jnaneshwar Maharaj is in Samadhi since 735 years or something like that. And Jnaneshwar Maharaj, in one of his writings, said that in the same way that you and I need a mirror to see our face, that reality, the reality that had it was nirakar, without nama, without rupa, it needed the mirror that is the universe in which it could perceive itself. So we think of, because we are individual beings, we think of ourselves as being, this is who I am, and that's all the rest of the universe. When in fact, there is no difference between what's outside and what's inside, except for that sense on the inside that I am perceiving the universe. So each one of us, therefore, has the potential to serve as the vehicle for the Supreme Reality to be able to perceive what it's like to actually to be not only examining the mirror, but be part of the mirror. Which is a very interesting way of looking at things, and for me, much more interesting than this, matter and energy kind of situation. But that does suggest that that when you get down to the earth element, according to Sankhya, you're about as far away as you can get from that reality. And the beauty is, once you have, I believe I'm paraphrasing the Srimad Bhagavata. Once you are down on the ground, you can't fall any further. There is only up.
Okay.
So that up means as you get more and more refined, you may not need an Annamaya kosha. Maybe you can just have a Pranamaya kosha, but maybe you don't need a Pranamaya kosha. Maybe you just can go by with a Manomaya kosha. But actually, maybe you don't even need that. Maybe you can use the Vijnanamaya kosha only, or the Anandamaya kosha only. So what we think of as being real here is real, but it's not the only reality. And so what we have is, and it's not limited to Bharatavarsha, to India, humans all over have created devatas, like Oshun, like the Egyptians created devatas. And so they're perceiving realities, human beings that were creating these devatas, they were perceiving realities from this angle. Those realities are perceiving the humans from that angle. They meet in the middle. And where they meet, then there is an interaction that then generates a being that for some period of time behaves for the human beings as a devata. Many people worship Pushan anymore. He's a Vedic devata. Okay. That's exactly my point. You haven't even heard of him, and you're a pretty well-educated character. So here is Pushan. In the Vedic days, he was very important. he got a bhag in the sacrifice all the time. Okay. But once those Vedic days had shifted, where is Pushan? How many people worship Varuna now? I mean, indirectly Varuna is being worshipped, but otherwise no one is worshiping Varuna anymore. And Varuna was very important. Mitra was important. So all of these devatas that were there in the Vedic era, they were absolutely devatas. They're still there, but they're not being worshipped anymore. Mm-hmm. That means they're not being fed. Mm-hmm. They're not being fed by human attention. That means they're not getting prana. Where your attention goes, your prana goes. So if they're not getting prana, that means they can't do anything. They don't have any shakti. And if you're shakti-heen, then you're not going to be able to do anything. Then nobody is going to worship you, because why are they going to worship you if you're not going to do anything for them? It needs to be a fair exchange. And one of the reasons this happened, at least here in this country, is that 3,000-ish years ago, there started to be serious urbanization and territorial people got fixated on, this is my kingdom, this is your kingdom, and so on. And things became more static. During the Vedic era, things were still kind of fluid. It was semi-nomadic, people were moving around. But then things became more static. And so what do we see? Starting from over a period of 1,000 years, starting from about 3,000 years ago to 2,000-ish years ago, Ayurveda becomes totally transformed from a Tarva-Vedic system, which is kind of shamanic, really. I've spent time with shamans in South America, very similar, to where it's a much more eclectic and a much more empirical medical system. And why was that necessary? In the texts, it says there was a conference in the forest, and all the great Mahatmas and all the great Vedyas went there. And the subject of the conference is, what do we do with all these humans that are living in cities and towns and they are settled down now? Mm-hmm. So when you're moving around and you are always having to be in a different location, always having to relate to your environment in a positive way, behave properly with the environment so it'll behave with you, that requires you, if you want to be healthy, to make sure that you keep a good track of what's going on with your prana. You make sure that your organism is healthy enough to do that. Once you get more static, you're in one place, you are able to communicate and build cities and create all kinds of stuff, but you're not moving around as much. And you're eating food that's been accumulated and accumulated a lot of tamas. And you have now not only food, but animals, and you're sharing all kinds of bacteria, and all kinds of diseases are started. And the diseases are living off of the ama in your system, which is all of the accumulated stuff that you have not been digesting because you are not moving around, because you're not keeping track of your own vitality. You're paying more attention to other human beings and less attention to the external environment. So the Ayurvedists understood that if we want to actually be useful, what we have to do is change the medical system. So now we're going to have to work with the help of plants and minerals and things like that, and use their energy, because the human beings have been devitalized by, yet they've gotten a benefit out of it. They can collaborate together. They can achieve things, but they have suffered in the bargain. So Ayurveda changed. Sanskrit totally changed. The Sanskrit of the Vedas and Paninian Sanskrit, totally different from one another. Jyotish changed. It was only dealing with the nakshatras, which were not equal pieces of the sky, and now it's aligned with the sun also, and everything is standardized, and calculations are possible that were not possible in the past. Everything has changed, and it changed. And we have Shiva, who was originally Rudra, who did not even get a portion of the Vedic sacrifice. He was only given the Uttishta. He was only given the leftover. And then Daksha made the mistake of failing to invite him and Sati, and that was the end of Daksha, and that was the beginning of Shiva. So, ironically, 7 of the 8 really Mahagadas, as we say in Ayurveda, 7 of the 8 really difficult diseases to treat began in the world as a result of the Daksha Yajñopadvamsha, the destruction of Daksha's yajna. The 8th was Kshaya, which means consumption, so TB or AIDS or whatever, when your body consumes itself. And that happened when the moon was cursed by Daksha because the moon was paying too much attention to Rohini when he should have been all of the other nakshatras he was also married to. So it's always a challenge to have so many wives, but he was not up to the challenge. But Daksha probably did not think. He was probably thinking, I'm the all-important Daksha. I can curse my son-in-law if I want to. But then what happened to him as a result of that? The law of karma kicked in, and then he ended up now having a goat head instead of a human head, because Veerabhadra and Bhadrakali came and chopped his own head off. So the law of karma is interacting with these devatas also. Vishnu was one of 12 Adityas, and the main thing about Vishnu, if you look in the Veda, was one day he was standing with his bow. He was kind of leaning on his bow, and a bunch of termites or ants bit through the bowstring, and the bow sprung and chopped his head off. Most people have not even heard this story, but they have heard other kind of stories of Vishnu, because there came a point where Vishnu became much more important. And it was at this same time. There was this total transformation. As the humans were transforming, so the way the humans were interacting with the devatas was transforming, and so the devatas became transformed also, because they're co-creations of these external realities with the humans. And I have to, I'm sorry, this is an extreme tangent, but I have to say, in this country, there's still plenty of very unusual things, and one of the things is getting possessed. And what was that, Kantara or some Kantara? I never saw it, but I saw the footage on YouTube of the possession thing. But there's possession, that's the real. Our dear friend of mine, who Dr. Ramkumar knows well, Dr. Fred Smith, has written a 700-page book called The Self-Possessed, that is all about the Vedic and Puranic and Ayurvedic and all kinds of different descriptions in the texts of possession states. So that possession is an important part of religion or spirituality in India since the beginning, probably. And this is still the case. And for example, there are still devatas let's say I'm thinking up in the Himalaya, and they act as oracles. There's a place in Himachal called Mandi. And right now, immediately after Shivaratri, for about a week, they have a Devata Mela. And the 250, 300 Devatas come from different towns. And you can have darshan of the Devatas, you can ask them questions. They're all in the same location. And I have heard, I have not seen this, but I've heard that there's a Devata judge also. Okay. And if in your village the Devata has not been doing the work, you've been going there and giving the Devata, agarbatti and mithai and what have you, and the Devata doesn't do your work, then you can come to the Devata judge and you can say, you can apply the, a rope, and the Devata judge, who is the Devata himself, the Devata judge will evaluate the situation, and if he decides the Devata has been delinquent, then he will say, no, all right, no prasad for you, no offerings for the next 3 months, now you can starve for a while and see until you start to behave. So this kind of thing happens. But this was definitely a tangent, but what I wanted to emphasize was I'm associated with a Devata up there who is undergoing what I find an extremely fascinating process. He started off as kind of a class of Devata called Adi Devata. And I think Adi means like a shepherd or something, or a cowherd or something. So he was probably some, kind of ordinary guy. And when he retired, he sat and meditated a little, and he achieved something, and then he passed on. And there he was, and people started worshiping him, and he started, appreciating that and paying attention to them, and then he became kind of a mafioso devata, kind of a gunda devata, because then it was like, if you come anywhere near me, you better give me a nariyal, you better give me a coconut, or I'm going to, cause your truck to go down the hill, or cause you to drop something on your foot or something like that. So, for a while there, he was more feared than really appreciated. But then, thanks to the intervention of some people who were sensible, they started having every year an Akhanda Pata of the Ramcharitmanas. Mm-hmm. And so they started saying, instead of calling you Adi Devata, we're going to expose you to the Ramayana now, and we're going to encourage you to start moving in the right direction. And so a few years after doing this, now, since last year, they've changed his name from Adi Devata to Mahavira Vira Devata. So he's still a Vira Devata, and a Vira Devata is not quite like he's still a very localized kind of Devata. But now he's been overlaid with Hanumanji, Mahavira Balavant. And so now Hanumanji is going to keep as long as Hanumanji is worshipped there, Hanumanji is going to keep moving him in the right direction. So he will evolve in the direction of Hanumanji, instead of evolving in the direction of becoming a bigger and bigger dada, on the hillside. There's a lot that goes on in this country, I tell you.
And so each one of the devatas is a consciousness, is without some level of bodies. I mean, maybe 3 levels out, 2 levels out, but some level of the kosha, and is actually, in that sense, a physical reality, each of them.
Well, they're realities that can work in the physical world. They can work in the physical world, but they definitely, to the degree, well, for example, here's Vishnu. There is a Dwarkadish. There is Jagannath Puri. There is Tirupati Balaji. There is Lord Ranganatha at Sri Rangam. There is Guruvayura Appan. There is Vitala at Pandharpur. These are all Vishnu. But if you've been to, and I have never had darshan in Puri, but I've certainly been to Puri and and you know what the devatas look like. Each one of them is very different. I've been to Nathdwara several times, and each one of they're all Vishnu, but they're all very different according to how they're worshipped, the people who are worshipping them, the way in which they're worshipped, and so they're the same, but they're not the same. They're the same on the more transcendent, the Mahavishnu level. That's one thing. Mahaganapati, Mahavishnu, Maheshwara. At the transcendent level, they're all one thing. When it comes one step down from the transcendent, then they come into things like this. And Sri Vimalanandaji, my mentor, said that even at a place like Tirupati, who is doing the work is not Vishnu himself, because Vishnu is mostly he's mostly in the Maha form. Vishnu has one of his shishyas who is there in that vehicle. That image is his vehicle. Because you do need, it's very, here I am drinking tea. I'm able to drink the tea because the tea is being held in this receptacle. So we have the energy of Vishnu, but it has to be held in something, otherwise it will just disperse in all directions. So there's the Shishya Vishnu. He's whatever kind of ethereal being he is. He is doing the work. He is doing the work. Why? Because Vishnu ordered him to do the work. The more work that he does, the better that Vishnu is pleased with him, and the more evolution he moves in that direction. And people are worshiping him as Vishnu, so they are not looking at him as the local devata, they're looking at him as the transcendent devata, so they're moving him in the transcendent direction at the same time.
Two questions. One, do they have a world of their own? All the Puranic stories of Durga, the Devata, Asur, are they all real in a different world? Are they happening? And I mean, those are stories that humans are perceiving, and there is some connection with the earth as well. For example, Devi as a young girl in Jammu in Vaishno Devi, and right, those are real incidents, right? So she went through this hill. There is a little cave there, for example. So there is what do we call that? The Thala Purana of each place, each temple. I mean, are they in some other plane of existence, or are they existing here and there is connection with the earth? That's question number one. And maybe you want to answer that first.
Here's a wire that has some electricity in it.
Yeah.
Is the electricity, it is moving through the wire. It's different from the wire.
Yes.
Except that it's really not different from the wire, because it's just the movement of electrons along the wire.
That's correct.
So it's really a movement. But it's enough of a movement to get the camera to work and to get the light to work and so on. So does it exist or does it not exist? It exists. But it doesn't exist in the way that you and I think about things existing, because this is what we think about things existing.
Yeah.
But do I believe there's a Nagaloka? I absolutely believe there's a Nagaloka. For one thing, Dr. Ramkumarji repeatedly at Vedic holds a Sarpabali, in which a Nagaraja is invoked, and you can, if you have the proper way of sensing, you can tell when the Nagaraja is there. There's definitely a presence that is different from, and it's different. It's different. It's not a human presence. It's a presence. It's an awareness. It's a consciousness, but it's not human. And people have been talking about Nagas for centuries, and Vishnu sleeps on a Naga, and Shiva has one around his neck, and Ganapati has one around his belly, and Buddha had one that was protecting him while he was getting enlightened. So the Nagas have been around for a long time. So they must be living somewhere. And I certainly, when we have the testimony of, in Ayurveda there are 4 pramanas. There's pratyaksha, you have personal experience, this is optimal. There is anumana, inference, yatirata dumaha tata tata vanhi. Wherever there is smoke, there must be fire. There may be fire without smoke, but there's no smoke without fire. Then there's upaman, analogy, and then there's aptopadesh or aptavakya, the testimony of experts. So when I have the testimony of an expert that says that this is the way things are, then I will believe that expert. And I, at least, have been very fortunate. Vimalanandaji was an expert. I met I refer to him as Junior Guru Maharaj, but I met him several times, Sri Ram Vishwambar Das Ji, whose samadhi is at Simhachalam, just outside of Visakhapatnam. I met him every year, at least once a year, for 12 or 13 years. And so I have testimony from him also. So as far as I'm concerned, absolutely.
And you said that the energy, if not held in a murti, would dissipate. So why do we give the same form? Does that energy have a certain form by itself, or is that the humans have given that?
But it's a co-creation. So when the humans were calling it Rudra, it was the form. Rudra's body was the storm.
Okay.
Now we're calling it Shiva, and we're saying, okay, Shiva, we're going to give you this linga is your body, or we're going to give you Nataraja, we'll let you dance maybe at Chidambaram or somewhere else, or we'll give you some other body. But that's a convenient vessel for but Shiva doesn't have to be in there. Shiva can take possession of someone. Shiva can take possession of a snake. Shiva can take possession of a bull. Shiva can take possession of whatever he wants to. And he will, and of course, part of what happens is, here you have, let's just call it the Shiva field. There's this giant field of awareness that's there. And, Shiva is samadhi nishto. He is always in samadhi. And you sit down and you start to say, I'm going to attract Shiva's attention. So, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Panchakshari mantra. You recite a lakh, you recite a crore. Shiva, of course, is in samadhi. If you are really consistent, and it may take more than one lifetime, eventually Shiva will say, I can vaguely hear something happening over there. And then after another couple of janmas, then he will start to hear more. And then he will think, at some point I'm going to have to pay attention to this even more. It's like what happened to Kalidasa. Supposedly he sacrificed his life 9 times before he actually got darshan of Kali. So you have to attract the attention of the devata. Then once you got the attention, once the attention is attracted, that itself is going to move in the direction of creating an image like the one that you were projecting on it. And as Vimalananda used to say, the first thing that's going to happen is, let's say you're worshiping Shiva.
But did the image come first, or did the projection of the image come first? In the sense, let's go to Kali, for example. Is there a real consciousness? Is it just energy of the whole universe who we give an image to? And that could be an image of a Kali at this point. Tomorrow it could be the image of a phone or a glass or something else. Is it that simple? Or does Kali, as the super conscious creating energy field, have that as the image to whoever reaches a certain level of awareness?
Here we have the Sankhya Darshana. And in the Sankhya Darshana, we have Purusha and Prakriti. Yeah. We have Mahat Tattva, or Buddhi. We have Ahankara, which is Kundalini. Ahankara is moving towards individuality. Kundalini is moving away. And ahankara is made up of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So what happens in the case of, you'll notice that, most of these devatas we talk about, there was originally a rishi who created the mantra. So we have this, and take Ganapati for example. A Ganapati originally was not the Vignaharaka, he was the Vignakaraka.
Okay.
He was always creating vignas, kind of like 80 devata. And finally, Ganaka Rishi, whoever Ganaka Rishi was, Ganaka Rishi said, enough of this. So he started paying attention to Ganapati. And because he was a rishi, he was much more influential. And he had plenty of time. He had thousands of years. And he just kept focusing on until he was able to grab hold of the attention of the Ganesha, the Lord of the Ganas. And then he said, what are you doing? Instead of creating complications for everybody, you should be removing their vignas, and then they will give you mitai. And you will be happy, and they'll be happy, and everything will be great. And then Ganapati said, you're absolutely right about that. And now we have the Ganapati that we're so fond of in Maharashtra, Ganapati Bappa Moria. But that was because somebody intervened. So we have to go back to the rishis, who were in fact generating, with the help of their own focus, with the help of their Paravani and Pashantivani, they were visualizing. They were saying, this is an image that will be useful for people to work with. And then let's suppose you're going to think, you're going to visualize Ganapati. And if you, for example, if you follow the Ganapati Atharvashirsham, he is red, and you worship him with red flowers, and so it's a very specific kind of dhyana vidhi. And you continue doing this long enough, you will bring that image to life in your own sukshma sharir, in your own subtle body, which is, after all, part of the living part of you. But now that and it's sort of like you've created this image that is a mirror image of Ganapati, but you've brought it to life. So now the mirror image will be able to connect to the real Ganapati, and then you will connect to the real Ganapati. So the images, in a way, they are just images. And in a way, they are doorways to the Devata, which is something, the totality of the Devata it's in a different dimension. So, we're three-dimensional people, but just pretend we were two-dimensional people. And here comes a sphere. But the sphere is now passing through this two dimensions. We don't see the sphere because we can't see it. We see what looks like a circle, and it gets small, and then it's a big circle, and it gets small again. We don't see what happened. We can only see what our dimensionality can do. So we're doing the same thing with these devatas have they're in all kinds of dimensions. We can see what little we can, but if we work with what we can see, then we can connect into them, and then we can become samipya, sayuja, sarupya, whatever you and that devata may want to collaborate with. So you have something like Kali, for example. Whoever initiated that image was definitely working with the funeral pyre. So the funeral pyre was pradanya, but then an image started to emerge, and whatever rishi was working with that started to work with that image, and then that image took on some of its own. It took on its own independent reality, and then people kept feeding it, and that independent reality is a function of Tamas. So this is a function of Tamas. Hooray for Tamas. We don't want too much of it, but if there was no Tamas, there would be no stability whatsoever.
Okay.
So Tamas is wonderful, unless you overdo it, in which case Tamas is not so great anymore. So by virtue of Tamas, there's enough Tamas in Kali, and of course she's very Tamasy because she is, after all, a Smashan goddess. But there's enough Tamas in her image that people can grab hold of it. That reinforces its solidity. That reinforces it as a Dharwaja, as a portal between you and the actual the Devata. As Vimalananda used to say, is the sky blue? The sky is not blue. The sky is colorless, but the sky looks blue to you and me. Kali looks blue to you and me, but she's, why should she be blue? She could be any color she wants to. She looks blue to you and me because we have that limitation of human perception.
My God, I've got so much clarity that I've been seeking for years now, talking to so many people, asking the same questions over and over again. I will have to watch this recorded conversation multiple times.
All thanks to Sri Vimalananda, first what he taught me, and then how he taught me to learn things. And he always said, Anubhav Siddha Karo. The Ayurveda and Jyotish and Vastu, the laboratory is in the world. You have to try out, what is the guna dharma of this? Does it work for me? Does it work for you? Does it work for him? Then you know about it, but only if you've actually had the anubhav of it. So you go to places, you see things, you learn things, you take from whatever is useful. I remember I used to enjoy, times have changed, but 40, 50 years ago, they used to, people always used to write, various shlokas or kahavats on their taxis. Mm-hmm. And I remember one very well, and I still think about it sometimes, because, the word Allah, yes, the Muslims use it, but really it just means God in Arabic. So what it said was, Bismillah bolo, darwaja kolo, Ya Rab tera sahaya. And so you say, in the name of God, and you open the door, and the entire world is going to cooperate with you. So you can say that in whatever language you want to, but that's what Ayurveda says, that's everything. If you cooperate with God, God will cooperate with you. But then you at least have to have some idea of who God is. You have to pay some attention to, attention means prana. You have to devote some of your prana to whatever your image of divinity is. And then you will enter into a relationship with the nature. Vimalananda called it nature. I like to call it providence. But then you and providence will be working together, because there's no difference between you and providence. Everything that happens to you, no matter who does it, they're all your karmas.
And when you use the word nature or providence or just divinity or universe, those words, at least in my mind, do not convey a deity, a certain consciousness, a deity. Like that is just, I don't know, primordial consciousness, or I don't know, base. I don't know what to call it.
And there definitely are people who have achieved oneness with the Supreme, who did not worship deities. In fact, yes, absolutely. So there is definitely the path of the nirguna approach to reality. Some people, some Nath groups talk about nirguna bhakti. Some of the Sufis talk about nirguna bhakti. So, but Vimalananda used to say, you have two nostrils. This is the Surya Nadi, this is the Chandra Nadi. Surya Nadi represents Jnana, Chandra Nadi represents Bhakti. And so if you stare at the sun long enough, you will go blind. So that's what Jnana is all about. You look at the world and you stare at it long enough and you realize there's no inherent reality in any of this. It's changing all the time. There's nothing you can grab hold on out here. The only thing to grab hold on is the supreme reality. So you become blind to everything else. And the Bhakti approach is, You become blind to everything else, but you become blind to whatever it is you have fallen in love with. And so Vimalananda used to say, if you stare at the moon, it doesn't matter how long you stare at the moon, you're not going to go blind. You will, however, go insane. You'll become a lunatic. So that was the idea of all the great bhaktas. They didn't care about becoming, free of having to take janma. They didn't care about moksha. They said, I don't care. I want to be with you. You can drag me wherever you want to, but I want to be. So that's how they connected. And they preferred that because that is the rasavanta approach, whereas the jnana is rasahina. There's no juice in that. And some people are very fond of juice, including all us Ayurvedic people.
My God. Okay, we'll end the conversation here and hopefully continue with whenever you're here. We'll have my next list of questions as I mull whatever I've learned today and see it over and over again.
Well, this is what Satsanga is all about, after all. And as I learned, one of the first kahavats I learned in the Ayurvedic college was Satsangati kim no karoti pumsam. What can Satsanga not do for human beings?
And Bhaja Govindam, what does Shankaracharya say?
Bhaja Govinda mudamate samprapte sanhite kale nahi rakshati dukrinya karane. Speak the name of Govinda, Murak, you idiot. Because when death is coming for you, the rules of grammar are not going to save you. And he said this because he was walking through Benares and he saw some pundit who was going over the word, the rules of the verb dukrinya, which nobody even uses, which is this most obscure thing that means to do. We have a perfectly good verb, kru, to do. Everybody uses that. And he just had so much compassion that out of his mouth came this spontaneous shloka. And then he thought, wow, this is great. And he composed an entire song. Satsangatve nasangatvam nasangatve nirmohatvam nirmohatve nischaltatve jivan mukti.
Thank you very much. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you, Dr. Ramkumar, for the introduction in this set.